Here we go.
Boom! So, guys, this is your boy here, HH Half Hope, back for another episode of Womb. So, well, we want to spice things up a little bit. Just get into a little bit of, I would like to call it friendly debate here. And I think that, this is a film that I think pretty much divides the panel here. And this is, of course, Mad Max Fury Road, directed by George Miller. This is the fourth film in the series. And again, it's a film that, I have very strong feelings about. And it's a film that I have only watched once because of my strong feelings about the film, which we'll obviously get into when we go there further. But obviously, before we really get into it and the background of the film, please introduce yourselves, my lovely guests.
You take it. I don't want to go second. Couldn't possibly.
My name's, you all know me as Machine Elf from my very sapient and smart contributions in the football hangout. But over here, you can call me Antonio.
Coolio. And
yeah, I'm just going by Basil today, or Basil, whichever you prefer. Whichever side of the pond you're on.
Basil, then.
Yes.
Okay, so I think before we really talk about the film, I think we have to talk about the Mad Max franchise, and I think, feel free to jump in, guys, whenever you want. For me, I feel, because I remember, when I first watched, because, see, my first exposure to Mad Max was, I believe it was either Mad Max 3 or Mad Max 2. Either one of those two, but I'm trying to think that it was probably Mad Max 3, which made a real impression upon me because, again, Tina Turner was very well known, especially in Nigeria as well. And I think it was one that was the most visually striking one. But obviously, after I saw Mad Max 3, I then saw Mad Max 2. And I think almost whenever you think post-apocalyptic, George Miller pretty much created that world and that aesthetic. Of course, you can argue that, you had Escape from New York, which came out in the early 80s. But I just think that the whole thing of the desert, post-apocalyptic,
the post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Yeah, wasteland. Like, what's it called? Fist of the North Star. Like,
well, that's literally like a direct copy.
A copy. So those two films were very iconic, and I think obviously I saw Mad Max 1 about 6-7 years ago, and I was like, yeah, it's cool, but it definitely wasn't what Mad Max 2 and 3 was. And I think people, before Fury Road came out, I think people agreed that really Part 2 was the best entry. And Part 3 was obviously when so much money was involved, producers were involved, and it just sort of went a bit wayward. But I think it's very important to understand how iconic these films were. It's what made Mel Gibson famous. And I think, it's like once after Mad Max 3, I think people thought, okay, it was done. They've done the 3, everything. So when Fury Road was announced, I was ridiculously excited, and I think this is probably when you guys can jump in. And I remember when they showed the trailer for the first time. It was basically two elements. I think it was the casting of Tom Hardy, and that first trailer. Like when I knew that, my gosh, Tom Hardy is going to be the new Mad Max. Because for me, I always felt like if the weakest part of the Mad Max was actually Mel Gibson, amazing director, quality director, not that great an actor. He's passable. So when I thought that, my gosh, you're going to get Tom Hardy to be Mad Max, George Miller is coming back. And when you saw the trailer, I was like, oh my Lord, this could be one of the great films of all time. So obviously just speak on the Tom Hardy casting and your impressions when you first saw the trailer for the film.
Go for it, Antonio.
I'm completely with you. I think it's that trailer just completely sold me on the experience, and I thought this is what trailers should be like. They don't make trailers like this anymore, where it gives you it pumps you up, first of all, to watch the movie, which is the primary objective, and second, it doesn't give away too much story. Then again, I didn't know that at the time, but the fact is there really isn't that much plot to give away in the first place.
Yeah, it's a film that kind of lends itself to a great trailer.
But it's a great, it does, but it's a fantastic summation of the thrill ride that Fury Road is. And, it gives you it's a tonal piece, basically, the trailer, which is what all trailers should be. Especially, trailers for comedies, they really annoy me because they sort of get the best of, the best one-liners
all the best jokes, all the best jokes,
all the best jokes, and put it in one movie in the trailer, and then ruin the actual movie for whoever watched it. But yeah, it completely jazzed me up. I wasn't expecting anything for it when people were talking about it, because I figured that the director George Miller was past his best, and what are the chances of him really nailing this at the ripe age of I think he was 72 at the time. He's 74 now. Yeah, 71. But then I saw the trailer, and that it blew away any reservations I had. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Basil, thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I was never that much of a fan of Mad Max, of the series.
I mean, but had you watched the films before Fury Road?
I've actually only seen bits of the first one and bits of Thunderdome.
Oh, okay.
First one's called Road Warrior, right?
No. That's part 2.
The first one's just called Mad Max.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I've seen Road Warrior. I've only seen bits of part 1 and bits of Thunderdome. And for me, Mad Max was more just it was the idea and the legacy of Mad Max that I was more interested in. The film itself, it never had that much interest for me, other than just what I just said, and the aesthetic of it. So, but
I'm sort of with you, actually. Although, I might have diverted a little bit from you in the sense that when I did watch it the very first time around, I think it must have been 2.
Sure.
Because 1, I can't imagine it would have made that much of an impression on me.
No.
Because it's so bare boned,
Yeah.
It's almost like a student film. In fact, it is. It's the original Blair Witch Project. It was done for 300,000.
No. It was just. It was pretty much like a chase movie, really. It was just basically. It was him. It was sort of like a stunts movie, really. About look at all these real stunts, but the story was really bare bones. Like Mad Max 2, basically. Mad Max 2 was known as the best one because that's really when everything just really came together. The story, the post-apocalyptic view, and the whole aesthetic was really refined well in Road Warrior.
Yeah, having the sort of the punk biker gangs with the it felt alive and it felt real, and it was just.
Did the post-apocalyptic element, was that established in the first one? Because I feel like it was just it could have passed for just a movie in the outback, like crazy people in the outback.
No. I mean, really, the Mad Max. I think it really was just about the stuff that happened to his family, then he goes hunting the people that get his family. But really, it was the best way to describe it was more of like a chase movie. So they didn't really go in depth in the whole post-apocalyptic. Basically, there's a reason why Mad Max 2 was much more better known than the first Mad Max. Because I think that really in Mad Max was when he really went to town in what the world looked like visually and really setting the tone. So I think Mad Max was when he really got a grip as to what he really wanted the world to look like.
Yeah, and the story became not so much about Max in part 2. He was just he's happened to stumble across a compound that needed his help. Whereas the first one is entirely
which carries on to this movie as well.
Sure,
but I know that
I as you guys have said, I was ridiculously hyped for the trailer. It was just it just felt so raw and so frenetic and so exciting and just so different. There was just something about it that just didn't feel you couldn't really predict how it was going to go, and you just felt like you were going to see something you'd never seen before. It just had that whole vibe about it, and so I was massively hyped going in.
Okay, so let me do it like this. For me, I want to start first with the things I liked about the film before we go into the massive issues, or rather massive issue I had with the film. So I just think let's start first with what I liked about the film. And even this even links into my frustration to the issue I have with the film. But first of all, what I liked, I believe that, I've seen some great intros to films. Again, Prometheus is a film that I really hated, but the intro to Prometheus I thought was amazing. Like the first 6, 7, 8 minutes when you see the engineers and so forth. There are amazing intros like the Terminator 2 intro and so forth.
Up is a movie that should have been 6 minutes long. The Pixar movie?
Oh yeah. I mean, see, I'm not a big fan of Pixar, so, and yeah, I remember that intro too, but again, that's, but I do know that was actually a very, somewhat iconic intro with regards to animated films. But look, man, I mean, because again, coming from me being a huge Tom Hardy fan and a massive Mad Max fan, watching the films multiple times in Nigeria, like that intro sets the tone to the film amazingly well. Like, because you understood, because again, 100%, even from the moment you saw Tom Hardy, like, boom, he's already a huge upgrade on Mel Gibson, because you can see his grittiness, you can see the aura he brings in, and you can just see the kind of like the real unfiltered energy he was bringing to the role, and just how it was filmed, and just because again, when you watch like Mad Max 2, you really see how dangerous and just how wild the world is. But just in that intro, he really just racks up the craziness of the world in a visual sense and a thematic sense of like the people that live there, how they're chasing him, how he's running away from them, and even when you hear the voiceover as well, it just set the tone of like, man, boom, we're in. And this is like, I mean, whereas Thunderdome probably went very Hollywood, this was just bringing it back to its Road Warrior roots in that intro. So,
but can I just say that I think Thunderdome is really gets a bad rap, and no,
I love Thunderdome.
Growing up, it was my favorite.
No, but see, my issue with Thunderdome is, if you take Thunderdome by itself, it's a bloody good film. And Thunderdome has some amazing set pieces and some amazing scenes. It's just that the stuff with the kids and so forth, I felt that was just the producers coming in and just trying to make it really cheesy. And also, Road Warrior was, I think, 15 or 18, and they basically took down the rating to make Thunderdome more family friendly. So.
But I do think at the same time, I agree with you. There is a lot of Hollywood schlock that was crowbarred in, and you can tell that is definitely a producer's fingerprints.
Imagine We Don't Need Another Hero as the theme song for this film.
Bloody good track.
Great track, but it's like tonally, it's just like
we don't need another hero.
Look, it's a track, but it doesn't.
But at the same time, it's approximating, and it's getting closer to that post-apocalyptic image that George Miller was trying to concretize, and could not, because then there was a giant lull between movies. But then I feel that he finally managed to do so with Fury Road.
I mean, Bob. So just speak on just like your feelings towards the intro and how you would rank the intro to the film amongst other intros in films.
I don't think the intro is when he's like he's being used as a blood bag, and
it starts with him like sort of on like overlooking the desert, and he like
and he's hanging upside down,
and he like eats a lizard, and then gets chased by a bunch of guys.
Yeah, but here's the thing about the opening. The whole movie is so frenetic that you forget about the opening very quickly, because I don't think it stands out all that much, because it's just one more note in a crazy guitar solo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the warm up. It's just the warming up the band.
Yeah. It is. It may seem like it's the ultimate hot opening, and oh shit, man, this stuff's. Sorry about cursing, but things are really kicking off. I'm sure they're going to cool down soon. But then they don't. They just keep it just keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and that's why, you know, for me, Fury Road is a very special film. It's one of those very few movies that you should definitely go watch in the movie theater, and I'm glad that I did. In fact, I'm glad that I ended up. I went for like a second. I went for a rewatch, and just by pure coincidence, I ended up in this crazy movie theater, this experimental movie theater that had these rocking chairs and water, like.
Oh yeah, 4D. I think that's probably the 4D experience, probably.
Yeah, something like that. It was just crazy. That second time around, I felt like I was on mushrooms or something. It was really an experience. But this to say that, yeah, in terms of opening, I think, you know, it didn't really leave an impression on me. That sort of an impression.
So, what do you, Basil? I mean, did the intro do anything for you, or just?
I mean, I think the intro. I think it is a great intro in the sense that it does perfectly set up a lot of the tone of the film. Like you get a sort of, but it also, you know, it gives you a taste. So you get like a small chase. Like it's not like a particularly big one, but you still get a feeling of like the rawness of it and the. But even still, like not so much. It's still like it teases you because it's from a distance. Like you don't get that like intimate closeness that you have with the other chase scenes later in the film. But the bit that sticks with me more about the intro is when you see him like being sort of processed, and they're like tattooing like his details, like as if he's like like some bit of produce.
Yeah, like property. Yeah.
They're detailing like his blood type and stuff, and just like the feeling inside that place with all the what are they called, the war boys, and just when he's escaping and you seeing like all these like horrible images of him, of his tortured past, just all perfectly setting up like this is Mad Max. Like this guy is very unhinged and very troubled, and he's in this world that's even more mad than he is. And there's just just the bit when he like tries to jump out, and he's like on that scaffold, that like, hook hanging from somewhere, and the guys are like reaching him, and the music's all crazy, and then the title just smashes up, and it just gets you like pumped.
Yeah,
yes, let's go.
Like it's such, and also again, we'll definitely speak about Junkie XL, who.
Oh man, the soundtrack to this soundtrack. Yeah, the soundtrack to this film is chain.
So I think basically, I mean, again, we're now sticking to all the good bits and everything. For me, I believe that, look, man, I mean, we can obviously talk about, we'll get into Furiosa, we'll get into like Nicholas Hoult, who was really, really good in his role. But and also the villain as well. I thought visually the villain just looked amazing. I just like, as far as just like when you just look at the crazy mad villain, I just thought it just visually looks quality.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all you need for a villain, practically. You know,
yeah, but
visually, really visually arresting villain. You know, like the devil from Legend, or the Emperor. I always rated the Emperor above Darth Vader just because he looks so creepy. You know.
Yeah. No. So I think basically for me, I think this film should, and I think we sort of like alluded to this when we sort of talked off air last week, that like for someone of his age to be able to make a film so well constructed but so energetic and dynamic at his age, that's way more dynamic than anything that a 30-year-old, 20-year-old would do, was just the craziest thing. And when you just look at how, again, it's essentially a chase movie. Like this, the whole film is a chase movie.
Yeah.
But but it's a chase movie with a story. Sort of like whenever, like, what makes a really good action scene is not just action for the sake of action. There has to be a story within the action. So yes, at the bare bones, and even he said, yeah, it's a chase movie. But within that chase movie, there's a story within that chase movie, because they're trying to get to particular targets. They're trying to get to particular things. So there are specific goals that they're trying to get to. But again, which is what I always say is like, so much stuff was shot real. And even the stuff that was CGI, you don't even know. Because basically, after I watched the film, I didn't remember any of the stuff that was CGI. So when I actually went to the website, and they showed you the stuff that was CGI. I was like, oh, that was CGI. I didn't see. I didn't even tell. And that just shows you great filmmaking.
Sorry, that's actually that reminds me. That's another thing that really left an impression on me in the trailer. Was like, oh, finally they're doing practical special effects. Actual stunts, actual. They're taking these rigs and they're actually flipping them upside down. It's not like some CGI fest, because you can always tell with CGI whether.
Oh, yeah, very easily. Like we're in the video game age.
Like people talk about this film like it's like, oh yeah, see, like look what you can do without CGI. But like you mentioned, Have Hope. It's like a very large amount of this film is CGI. It's just that it's used so well. That's the difference. It's not about that. It's not that just CGI is bad. It's just that when you rely on it too much, and just the way you use it. It's used in this film in such a way that it just augments all the practical stuff, so that your eye is always drawn to the stuff that is real and practical. So you're like, you're getting that visceral realness. Whereas the CGI stuff just augments it and just makes
basically it's like
grander and bigger and crazier.
I mean, basically, it's like that's where the quality of the filmmaker comes in. Because again, let's bring his name in there because we love him so much. Zack Snyder.
Ugh.
See, someone like A. Snyder will be like, "Oh my gosh, I've got CGI. Let me just show the CGI, and you know exactly that this is CGI and CG." But because George Miller like cut his teeth back in the 70s and 80s, and that was really where he really cultivated himself. Even if you show him CGI, and again, not all these guys are like this, because we've seen Ridley Scott with the Alien Covenant film really just be at the behest of CGI. But it is a filmmaker's quality and the choice that he makes that, okay, we can't do everything real. That's just impossible, because again, obviously, because as he said that like the whole film was storyboarded. The entire film was all storyboarded, so they had a visual blueprint of what the film was. So he knew that, look, for me to do that, I'm going to have to use CGI because I want that scene. But as CGI, but it goes to the quality of the filmmaker that I want this to feel as real as possible. So I'm going to use all of my filmmaking tricks to, as you said, divert people away to make sure that they're not thinking that it's CGI, because it's surrounded by realness. The lighting is a bit different. It's done in quick bits, and the CGI is not so overtly done that, for me, and trust me, I know exactly when I'm seeing CG. For me, I didn't think anything was CGI. Maybe I thought maybe one scene, like maybe when they were in the hailstorm. Okay, so that's CGI. But most I didn't think it was CG. So I was like, okay, what?
No, but even that looks really cool. It's a really cool image when you have like that super wide shot of the car entering the cloud.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's like obviously CG, but yeah, almost everything else you could be forgiven for thinking the whole film was shot with just practical effects.
Yeah, and I think even for me, watch, because again, just one of the scenes that just stuck with me was, like I think it was sort of towards the end of the film when you see those guys on stilts, all
the final chase,
all flipping through. And I'm just saying to myself that, like, look at how amazing this looks, and look at the feeling that it's giving you, because you know that it's guys that are really doing this stuff. But then I then say to myself that, why can't more directors do this? And the issue is that, first of all, it's two things. It takes skill and it takes time. Most people don't have the skill of a George Miller, and most people are not willing to put in the time and the effort and the patience. Because as good as George Miller is, it's still difficult what he was able to do. It requires planning. It requires very meticulous storyboarding, and it requires proper execution to the stuff, where most directors just don't have the skill or the patience or the mindset to be able to execute that. So
I think patience is the key word that you use, because a lot of we know Ridley Scott knows how to do and use practical effects. But it's such an easy route to just go, all right, can we do it in CGI? Just do it in CGI then. It's much easier than getting like a crane full of crazy equipment, and it's just logistically it's much easier. So it's about laziness. So for me, this just shows George Miller's commitment to the project and to his craft. Really, that's why it doesn't really take projects on very frequently. His career is like he does a movie and then he sits around for 5 years, because once he does and chooses to do a movie, he's all in.
And what's it called? Even in one of his films, I totally like. I keep telling people that Babe Pig in the City is one of the reasons why I've tried to be a struggling vegetarian. You know, so because watching that film, I was like, it's had a profound effect. I was like, oh, geez, this is what animals go through. Damn.
I wasn't the biggest fan of Happy Feet.
But have you seen Babe Pig in the City though?
Yeah, when I was a kid. Yeah.
All right, Antonio.
Yeah, so I loved both Babes and Babe in the City even more. Pig in the City. This to say what? Oh yeah, but I'm surprised that you would like that movie and you're not a Pixar guy.
Yeah, no. I've never really been a Pixar person. Like I'm more like
you owe it to yourself to watch Toy Story 3, because it's one of the best movies, period, of the last. Is it 10 years or was it before that? 10 years.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've not even seen Toy Story 2 though, so.
That you can skip.
Okay. No. I've got to watch 2 before I watch 3. Like I like to do things in order. So okay, so look, man. As I said again, look, I mean, what he achieved in this film from a visual storytelling point of view, was absolutely incredible. I remember reading a review, and I think this is sort of like one of the very few like not positive reviews. And the reviewer said, "Oh, like, look, if this film is boring, it's all it is a chase scene. Like, there's no real story or anything." And I think that just shows you like the beauty of cinema, which is why, you know, on our discussion about Terminator 2, we have to expand what we deem as good cinema. We can't just say the best quality films are the films that have the dramatic acting, the crying, the emotion, and everything. Like, Fury Road is a totally different kind of cinematic experience. You know, because again, what's it called? Remember back in the day, when there was no dialogue, like silence film, like films are just told through actions, and you had to put in your imagination into the whole thing. So it is a quality piece of filmmaking where like a guy has made a film where obviously there's dialogue and there's a story, but really the crux and the juice of the story is told through this chase scene. So it's told through more action than dialogue.
Well,
it's brilliant.
I mean, people criticize the lack of plot or missing the point, because you said it yourself. This is a genre called the chase movie, and chase movies don't really have time to sit around and burden you with dense plot lines and character work. Otherwise, there wouldn't be chase movies. You know, they have to be kinetic, and they have to, from start to finish, it has to be doom, 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 doom. And this is the quintessential chase movie. Another example of a great chase movie is Apocalypto, and I would throw in Mission Impossible 3, which is by far the best of the Mission Impossibles, as a quasi chase movie, because it also has this sort of kinetic. Frenzied pace about it.
Oh no! Like I may have to disagree with you with MI3, but Apocalypto, as far as one of the best chase movies of all time, 100%. Like, yeah, we'll definitely get into that. So let me start it, because again, we're just going to build up to a little back and forth. Your thoughts on Furiosa, the character in this film? I'll let you start off, Basil. Your thoughts on Furiosa, the character in this film?
This film is very much Furiosa's story.
Interesting.
Like, I think there's not much question about that. Like, this is a film that's, you know, the action starts with Furiosa's decision to betray the Citadel.
And diverts the whole.
And to and so her mission to get Immort and Joe's wives to the Green Place is where the story kicks off, and that's what sort of everything starts to revolve around. And she's kind of an outlier character in that almost every other character in the film is kind of broken and damaged, and so is she. but like she seems a lot more kind of together and stable than everyone else. Like all the girls, all the wives are all a little unhinged. Mad Max himself is very unhinged and almost like bestial a lot of the time. And then you've got all the war boys and everything. So like she just seems like this kind of solid, kind of almost too solid presence in the film. But you could argue that maybe you need that as, you know, to kind of ground you within you've got all these lunatics around you. But I think she plays the sort of, she doesn't come across unconvincing as
no.
in her role, in that she's like this, like she's a high-ranking soldier in this strange society, and it doesn't feel out of place. When she has to fight, she does it like Charlize Theron gives a good performance, I think. And yeah, I think she's like, yeah, well, I wouldn't say she carries the film, but she's a good focal point for it.
All right. Antonio, thoughts on Furiosa, the character?
I'm sure there's some kind of political, metaphorical reading into Furiosa and her troupe, where it's about women escaping the clutches of an oppressive patriarchy or something like that, especially these days. I don't know if that was George Miller's intention. I hope not.
Sure. I mean, you could make that if you wanted to.
Yeah. But for me, she's a really solid character. She seems like a strong matriarchal figure. You know, you can buy her kicking ass and kicking names. It's not one of those. It's not totally unbelievable. I think the girls that are following her, obviously, that's totally unbelievable because they all look like catwalk.
Model.
You know, well, that's kind of
model.
the point, though, right? Like
But that's part of the point. I mean, that's part of the twist.
Because they're like the trophy wives for.
Yeah, they're literally his trophy wives.
Yeah, and also it does it carves a really interesting contrast between, you know, how pure and angelic they look with this really grimy, dirt infested world that where the setting is, you know. But apart from that, you know, it's a solid performance from what's her name again? I forget.
Charlize Theron.
Charlize Theron, right? Only one of the biggest actresses. But yeah, I liked her, and it didn't. Honestly, HH, I know you have an axe to grind against the fact that they made her such a central element.
I'm building up to there. Relax. I'm building up. Look, we're starting nice, and we're building up. We're starting nice. Okay, always starts nice.
But I'll just say this: in my view, the star of the show is the world itself. You know, it's the crazy, kooky world. It's not Mad Max or Furiosa. It's the setting. So it didn't bother me.
Okay, but just a quick response to that. It is called Mad Max Fury Road, though. But I'll get the story. I'll expand on the point.
We reviewed a film called The Shawshank Redemption.
Look, let me just present my point now. As far as Furiosa goes, for me, I think I think the Furiosa character is a really good character, really important character. I love her look. I thought Charlize Theron gave a good performance, and I just liked the character's place in the story. And even once we got presented towards the characters, like, oh no, this is a very interesting character. Like, especially given her role in and with the whole juxtaposition to the models and everything, and how she looked in comparison to them, what her goal was, what she was doing to get towards her goal, her sort of relationship with Immortan Joe and everything. It was a very interesting kind of dichotomy with what Mad Max was. So my issue with the character was cool. So now this is where the issue that I have with the film comes from. You see, it's called Mad Max Fury Road. That's what the film is called. You start the film with the dude called Mad Max. You flipping cast Tom Hardy in the role as Mad Max. So you've done everything right. As we've already said, this film looks incredible. This film is executed amazingly well. Tom Hardy, one of the best actors working right now. His casting for Mad Max quality, what he was doing with the role, boom, amazing. But then, like, sort of like a third of the way through or halfway through, Mad Max somewhat just became like a side character, and Furiosa sort of became the main character. And as you said, Basil, like the film became about Furiosa.
Well,
my thing about that,
what I said was it's her story.
Okay, so okay. What about Mad Max's story then? Like,
but
where is his story?
Like his story, you could like. What's interesting about Max is that it almost gets the sense. You almost get the sense that his story has happened. Like he's like all the crazy stories and ridiculous things that have happened to him have happened and left him the way he is. But what makes this not? What makes it not a case of her being the central focus and him just being a lackey is that this whole film is told from his perspective. Like he's the point of view character for this film, and like his relationship with Furiosa and also his relationship with Nux, which is Nicholas Holt's character.
Yeah, I was going to say that. There's a lot of, I think it's fairly well dispersed where the attention of the audience has to go to. You have Max, who has a more interesting backstory, arguably, than Furiosa, because you actually see flashes of his son or daughter getting run over. Or, he once had a family and sort of become unhinged because of that.
Yes. So like he's the point of view character who we see we see Furiosa's story through, as well as like his involvement with all the other characters that ends up shaping a lot of the story. And also he's the character who perhaps you could argue changes the most throughout the like Furiosa doesn't change. Like she has no arc. She
Okay. Finish it.
Even it's her story in that like she is affecting the plot, and her mission and goal are the focus of where the story is going and what the events of the story revolve around. But Max is the point of view character. He's the character that we see the story through. And his involvement in it is a massive does play a big part in what happens. And he's also like he has more of an arc. He has more of a change more than any other character. Perhaps arguably with Nux, who also has a change and an arc. Which, if Max wasn't there, he wouldn't be relevant. Like he would have no connection with Fury. Anyway, I'm repeating myself, but yeah, that's why I would argue it's not a case of Furiosa being the main character and Max just being a side character. They both have a central role in the story, and Max is unique and important and relevant in the sense that the film is called Mad Max because it's from his perspective.
Okay, look, I'm going to respond to your point, but Antonio.
No, I was just going to say that I agree completely with Faisal. Maybe that's the reason why Max's relative lack of screen time grates for some people so much, is because the movie establishes that you're seeing it. You're basically seeing it through him. So you align with his character so much that you're like, why can't I see more of him? But yeah, I agree that the movie is focused on Max, and you see it through his perspective. And he might not have a lot of speaking lines, and it may not be the Mad Max show, but it is ultimately about his relationship with Furiosa, and everything rotates around Max. He's the central, gravity force, I guess.
Oh, okay, look, okay. So now, this is where I go from the whole thing. See, the use of the word central role. See, when I think someone has a central role, I link that with importance, the importance for the role. So as you guys have said, this is Furiosa's story. Now, I may disagree with whether it's told through Mad Max's eyes or anything, but you've just said that this is Furiosa's story. And because the crux of the story, the themes of it, the thing with her and Immortan, because I'm going to get to who end up killing Immortan Joe, because I don't know what the hell Mad Max actually did in this flipping film of any notes. So I'll get there. But my main thing, and the thing I look at is importance, because you see, I don't have an issue with Mad Max not being the main character. It's how it's executed. Case in point, in Road Warrior, even when I watched it recently, I was like, he's not really the main character. Like, it's much more of an ensemble piece. But the thing about Road Warrior is they need him. Without him, they are screwed. So what makes Road Warrior interesting is we don't see Mad Max a lot and we don't follow him throughout. He's actually on the outside. And we really follow the guys who are pretty much trying to defend themselves against these crazy wild gangs. But the thing about this is that the only way these guys can survive is because they need this outsider. And this outsider has the thugged out skills to be able to save them. So he is of central importance to the plot. With this, Mad Max is important to a certain degree. But his importance is either shared with Furiosa, or Furiosa is arguably even more important to the story than Mad Max is. Because at a point, a lot of the crucial story beats, a lot of the crucial things that really sway things towards our protagonists is done by Furiosa. Like, I think the only major thing that Mad Max does, I believe, is kill that huge muscly guy. And that was it. And I think he even had help.
No, he doesn't kill him.
Basically, I'm with you in that sense. We would have wished to have seen Mad Max kick a little bit more ass in the movie. But would it bother you as much if you knew that this was the first in a trilogy?
No, no, because that's a cop-up. Because my anger,
I don't think that helps.
No, it doesn't help. Because you see, my anger towards this is how well the film is made and just how good the film is. And so much of the hard work is already done. But again, like it's because what I want to just point out very clearly here is this isn't a case of like, oh my gosh, you're against women and you don't want women to be doing this thing, or your sex is like, no. That's not the point. As we've already said, I think Furiosa is a great character. It's a really great character, and it's a really important character to this. But this is Mad Max. Like the intro you gave me was okay. That intro told me, which is why I said the intro is important. That the intro is important because that intro told me that we're getting more into the psyche of Mad Max, and Tom Hardy is going to be able to give us those emotions and those psychological, and he's going to take us deeper psychologically that Mel Gibson simply couldn't. Which is why, like, that was more exciting for me because, see, as good as Road Warrior was, as much as I liked Thunderdome, the weakest link was Mel Gibson because Mel Gibson is a limited actor. So I was like, the world is amazing, the thing's amazing, and even to your point, as you said, Antonio, where you said, no, the star of it is not Mad Max, it's the world. You see, I accepted that for Road Warrior and Thunderdome, where the star was the world. But when you have Tom Hardy, who is an amazing actor, I mean, you've got your Mad Max there, because if you now marry the amazing world you've built plus what Tom Hardy is doing, because what he was doing with Mad Max was very interesting. But towards midway, it was like he just became like a muffled dog at one point. So all that you had built up in the intro, like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's intense, he's tenacious, a lot of stuff that's going on around his head psychologically and everything. And this guy just giving Mad Max so much more levels that Mel Gibson couldn't give him. I was like, man, once this guy really gets going and we really now get deeper into the darkness and the craziness of this world, this film is just going to go crazy. But then when Furiosa comes, he just takes away from all of the kind of juice that he built up from Mad Max in the intro.
See, I think a lot of like what you're saying is, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with exactly, but it's like this is all based off just what you would have preferred to have been in there with, instead of taking what's just there. Like, but, this is not that.
Okay. Just a quick question though. Okay, so you don't think there's an issue with a film is called Mad Max Fury Road, and it is not quintessentially about Mad Max?
I don't think the title means anything. Like, it could be called.
It's like saying The Exorcist is about The Exorcist. It's not really. It's about the Reagan being possessed.
Well, the Exorcist.
What I mean is like if you're talking about just what you would have preferred, where you would have preferred the film to go, just based off your tastes and based off just what you would like, that's fine. But I don't think the title has any issue to do with that. Like, but I mean, you could have an issue with it being part of a Mad Max extended universe that has a particular like style or something you would expect. But I think just using the title as a justification for why there should be more of a certain character.
But I can also understand from HH's perspective if I mean, you seem to be a really big fan of Tom Hardy, that you would want to see him stretch his acting chops more and be given something more to work with. And also, I'm in agreement with you there. I would have preferred to see him have another like a scene where you're like, man, this guy's tough as nails. There's a reason why this guy's why his name is on the title. Exactly.
Oh no, and also again, I don't know how much this is true, but I was reading something that there was a bit of, I don't know whether you want to call it animosity or unease.
Yeah, I heard that
from Hardy and Charlize Theron.
No, I thought there was like a bit of. I heard that there was like confusion or, if not animosity, between him and George Miller.
Really?
Yeah, I think I heard some of that as well. And again, like,
I mean, that's just, I don't know.
Like, so basically, see, this just means just snowballing. I do believe that maybe Tom Hardy thought that he would be given a much greater role,
maybe,
in the film, and I think because again, like, look, for example, Sean Penn in Tree of Life, by Terrence Malick, like he said that when he was filming the film, he wasn't really sure what he was doing. And then when he now watched the film again, he was like, I have no idea what the hell I'm actually doing in this film. I don't have a flipping clue.
That's Terrence Malick. Yeah,
and also, let's bring Terrence Malick in again. Adrian Brody, he actually, so he filmed lots of stuff in, what's it called? Thin Red Line. Massive, huge footage. So he now takes his whole family and everything to the premiere of Thin Red Line and everything. And he now finds that most of his parts has mostly been cut out. And instead...
New World. I think it was for the New World.
No. Thin Red Line. Thin Red Line, yeah, 100%. So basically, and really, Jim Caviezel had pretty much been re-edited to be much more of the main character than Adrian Brody was. And Brody was like, my gosh, I brought my whole family here and everything. I filmed all this sort of thing that I was the main character, and instead I wasn't. So my point is, like, look, I'm not that myopic to be like, oh my gosh, it's called Mad Max Fury Road. Why is Mad Max not there? Oh, this is bad. Because again, look, the whole point and the beauty of storytelling is, like, you know what, like, expand yourself. Even if it's the main character, like, you know, he can be put on the side. So it would have been interesting if this was Furiosa's story, but Mad Max had great importance. My thing is about the importance. Forget about the screen time, about him being in everything and everything. I don't think it's a key of importance. Again, I use the example of Road Warrior. He's not in every scene. That thing, the focus really is on that group. But he is of such importance to that group. And I think the way he's presented is interesting because it's a Mad Max film called Mad Max Road Warrior, but he's presented from the outside. But you never lose sight of his importance to that group. And that is where you really respect, man, this guy is Mad Max, because this guy is a lone warrior who can take it upon himself to somehow, some way help a group of people. And he doesn't want payments. He just does it because, look, it is what it is. So he has his own complications of how he wants to help people. And I think it's very important to, like, especially for your main character, for there to be a natural kind of consistency to what your character is about. So again, we saw about his importance and his single-mindedness in Thunderdome as well. So I thought in Fury Road. Okay, let me ask you guys this. Honestly speaking, how important was Mad Max to the mission that these guys, that the group had with the girls and so forth? How important was Mad Max really? Just be fully honest. How important was he?
He was important in that he averted like a few disasters, but he wasn't that important. But then,
no, I'm sorry. He's the guy that gets the rig. There's a point where, well, but then again, I'm thinking, Well, there's a point where they're stranded. That they have that fight. Furiosa sort of manhandles Max, and seems to, she's like about to overpower him, but then he turns it around and he gets the rig.
Yeah.
And he starts driving away. But then he saves them basically. Decides to take them.
No, but I don't think that's a good example, because if he hadn't,
No, because she only she knows. That's what I remembered. Only she knows how to drive the rig, right?
Yeah. So, but his presence there doesn't help them in any way. Like, he's actually like getting in their way at that point,
right?
Like trying to like drive off with their rig. So, if anything, he's actually more of a hindrance. At that point. It's only like later when he just ends up being like sort of extra muscle, and helps take out like some guys that they're not able to, or just like to just be like an extra like enforcer almost. But I really don't think his usefulness is really that important or that relevant. I think like his perspective is what's more interesting and more important, whether or not he's useful or not. Like, and I think honestly, like in terms of all the things you like mentioned in regards to Terrence Malick, who like I'm not a fan of, but I still think the vision and the story and the film is what matters more than getting the most out of a certain actor, or like trying to, it's like making the most of whatever tool you've got, because look, like I've got Tom Hardy and he can do this and that, so I should really make him do all these things, because otherwise it would be a waste.
Okay, put it this way.
If you want to tell a particular story that doesn't require those sorts of things, then I still think the story and the world and the vision matter more.
Okay, see, I love that you brought up that point. Excellent point. As we said before, I still think that, based on my hang-ups and everything, this is a chase movie that still has deep meaning behind it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of story behind it. But my thing is that I believe, and I have the firm belief, that it's not the case of like, just use Tom Hardy because it's Tom Hardy. If he was used more, you have a better film. Charlize Theron is a good actor. Tom Hardy is a great actor. And I felt that from that intro, from what you saw of him and the dynamics of the story, I felt that there was a greater story to be told that would have improved the film and made the film even much more deeper if you had expanded upon the Mad Max character, especially from what we have learned from Part 1, Road Warrior, Thunderdome. Like, how much did the Mad Max character really grow from those three films?
But sorry to interrupt. I just like, I obviously can't speak for George Miller, but I genuinely think that like the story was very much secondary. Like for him, like the purpose of making this film and I would imagine his inspiration and drive for making it was the world, was the aesthetic, was the action and the feeling of it, and what makes it, in my opinion, a great film is that stuff does seem front and center, but there is still really great cinematic storytelling throughout. Like, for example, there's one action scene where they're running from a bunch of bikers. And in that scene, you see the relationship between Max and Furiosa develop through the action. Like, you see them trust each other more. You see them like working together and like being cooperative more. Like, you don't need any scene of them talking to build up that I trust you more now. Like, it's purely done through the action. Same with his relationship with Nux. It's all done. They barely speak to each other, but through the visual cinematic story, through like the way it's told visually and with the audio and everything, it like you get the sense of what's happening and what's building between these characters. But that's more important.
But you see, and again, I want to bring Antonio into this. You see, like this actually blends very well with Blade Runner. You see, in Blade Runner, Harrison Ford for me is a decent actor who was cast very well in Indiana Jones. I still felt like other people would have done a better Han Solo. I still feel like other people would have done a better Deckard, but Indiana Jones was just, nobody could do a better Indiana Jones than him. So in Blade Runner, Harrison Ford didn't do anything in that film to tell me that, oh no, I want to know much more about Deckard. And the world of Blade Runner was so strong, so powerful. The aesthetic was just so mind-bending that is the film. The film is the world, and it's just the characters playing around in the world. My thing about it is, again, it's going back to the intro. I get the world is very important about Mad Max. Again, look, the guy, he pretty much created the post-apocalyptic aesthetic. So it is a very key aspect to Mad Max films, is the world that George Miller created and is unique to him. But for me, I feel that you see, that would have been, back for Road Warrior and Thunderdome, it was cool because, again, when we saw what Mel Gibson was doing with the role, I was like, okay, all right, it's not really about Mad Max, really, the character. Because Mel Gibson doesn't really have the acting chops, or he's not really doing anything with the character that's very interesting. So he is important, but he's much more of he's part of the palette of the world. But I think what Tom Hardy was doing, especially in those first 15, 20 minutes, and when he first meets Furiosa, and the back and forth with Furiosa and the way that he's relating to her, I was like, oh, no, we now have a character here. And this is a character that I want to know about this character. Like, I want to find out more about him because he's doing stuff that Mel Gibson just wasn't doing. So in that sense, basically, it's one of those things where, look, if you've written the script already, the script's already written already, and if the script is like, nope, this is how it's going to go. It's about Mad Max is there, Furiosa is there, this is how they meet there, and this is what it's going to be, then boom, you can't just change this midway through. But I didn't read the script. So I'm just watching the film cold. So as I'm watching the film cold, I'm like, oh, wow, this Mad Max, this is a really cool character. Oh, wait, how come he's just in the background? Oh, Furiosa is now the main. Oh, but Mad Max, is it really needed? He's just sort of like tagging on up. So my mind is just sort of like, whoa, from a guy who's like, oh, this is our star, this is our protagonist, to, oh, no, this is the protagonist, and this is just. Because by the time you get to the end of the film, can we still call Mad Max the protagonist of this film?
No.
He was the vehicle through which you took the ride. I wouldn't say a protagonist per se.
And therein lies the issue.
Well, no. But therein lies an issue that's particular to your taste, in the sense that, like, well, I would argue that I didn't really like. The world was much more interesting. Like, the world mattered more, and like I had sort of accepted in my head that, okay, maybe Max just isn't that interesting a character, but it's fine because that's not even a priority for me at this point, because the way the world has been created, the way I'm so invested in, like, just seeing more action and more spectacle and more just of the world opening up and feeling more rich and alive. Like, that's what the film.
But you see, Basil, I know you, and I know you very, very well. And I know that you love characters.
Sure.
And I know that you love certain kinds of characters. Sure. And I truly believe 1000%, based on how well I know you, that if Mad Max was really fully developed, it would greatly enhance your enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you on that. I'm just saying, like, but that's just like what we get from Mad Max. I greatly enjoy anyway. Like, it would have maybe been 1,000 times better with this or that or whatever. Or like if Max himself had been developed into a really interesting character. But to me, it doesn't matter, just because the film gives me so much of something else that I don't think I've ever had from any other film. So it's like, I can go to plenty of other films for great characters, but for something like Mad Max, for something that Fury Road kind of gives, I struggle to think of many other films that give that kind of experience.
Well, but then if you also there's also the fact that if you ascribe by the neo-Marxist interpretation of the film, which is repugnant, but it's out there, then Mad Max needs to be that way, because he's a masculine figure. So he's reduced to being just a grunt. And in this world, and the story, if you interpret it as a metaphor for a world overridden and overtaken by toxic masculinity.
I think sure you could give a university student like interpretation and analysis of almost any film that way if you wanted, but like
but this one, but this one, there's just a lot of signs out there. I mean, there's just a lot of things for you to clutch onto.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't. I know. I hope it's not about that, but because I enjoyed it too much to for me to think that it is.
I mean, whether it is or not, let's not bring.
Oh no! For me, like I think that's definitely an element, but that was not really what I got as the overarching theme watching the film. Like again, I just view it as no, this is a bloody, crazy piece of cinema and an amazing chase film with like a story. But let me ask you guys this though: in your view, do you think that Mad Max should have killed Immortan Joe, or it was right thematically for Furiosa to kill Immortan Joe?
I think it's definitely Furiosa should kill him because that's where the arc closes. You know.
Yeah,
there's a lot more pathos in her killing him than Max. You've never seen him before. She's finally escaped the clutches of this terrible tyrant that's been using every female figure that's worthy of breeding around him as experimental cocoons, basically.
Exactly. She has a relationship.
And finally she becomes, she goes, I'm a woman, hear me roar, and takes emancipates a crew of women with her and escapes the clutches of this terrible man. And he catches up to her and she lets him have it, of course.
Yeah, but I do agree. I would echo that point in the sense that like her story, like there's nothing narratively satisfying about Max killing Immortan Joe because he doesn't even know him. He doesn't care. Like they have no connection and no relationship. Whereas Furiosa's whole story revolves around Immortan Joe and like trying to escape him. So
and it's funny. It's one of the things. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. I finished it. She has to.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was sort of tragic and but in a funny way, and made Immortan Joe's a very underdeveloped character, but you really don't need to develop him all that much.
No, you don't. Like
and I'm glad he's sort of suave in mystery. It makes him a more effective villain. There's a scene where it's the lady that's pregnant, the girl that's pregnant.
Yeah.
His son dies, and you realize he's been trying to birth. He's been trying to procreate in search of a worthy successor.
Or he just wants a son. He just wants a healthy son.
But he already has sons. But they're all sort of like
they're all like deformed in certain ways.
They're all deformed and mutants. One of them is like the muscles basically has a P for a brain, and the other one can think, but he's tied to a wheelchair and can barely function physically. So you can tell that he's been just producing aberration after aberration after aberration, and then he finally gets it right.
But this is one of the most beautiful things. Like the best things about this film is like how this stuff is never told to you. Like it's all just there for you to just pick apart. And
that's what I love.
With almost every element of it. Like the whole culture, their whole like weird religion that's all just sort of like based around cars and machines and going to this like Valhalla, and the whole society where you've got this like there's one group coming where they're called like the bullet farmers, and They
No, I love
look
it.
at a whole style, and then you've got the guys coming from the oil city, and they've got a whole different look, and it's never like talked about, and it's never gone into, you never have someone just sitting telling you the history of how everything, like all that stuff is just there for you to just make your own mind up and create the picture of this world that it just gives you all the perfect clues and build up for. It's so creative, it's so just imaginative, but executed with such like confidence, and that the audience can make their own minds up and will make their own picture of this world.
I mean, but one thing I definitely wanted to say, and I think you guys touched upon it, is and some people will disagree with me on this, is that I believe that Immortan Joe is a better villain than Thanos.
No.
Can I explain?
Sorry.
I know, as people say, and the reason why, okay, see, my only issue with Immortan Joe is how he went out and how he was taken out. But put that to one side. You see, if I'm writing a story, or how I like my villains to be, is less is more. Less is more. Like, when you see, like, for me, in my view, Thanos isn't a villain. Okay, he's a bit misguided and everything, but in Infinity War, they spend so much time trying to rationalize his craziness and his madness. He spent so much time talking. We learned so much stuff about him that the more we knew about him, the more like, no, I'm not really afraid of him. The thing that we fear the most is what we know little about. That's something that makes us fear the most, is what we know little about. But the more and more that we know something, the more and more that fear is taken away, because fear and mystery are like kindred spirits, So
that's why it ties back to what I said in the beginning. That's why I always take the Emperor above Darth Vader as a villain, because Darth Vader, you see too much of him. And also, he's discarded as a mere thug in the first movie. He goes, by that admiral. He goes, we don't need your sorcerer's way here, Vader. He's like some thug that the Emperor, a lackey that the Emperor keeps around. But anyway, I don't want to derail the.
No.
I completely agree with it.
Okay. I completely disagree. Though I hear where you guys are coming from.
No, but you see, my issue is,
finish your point, sorry.
Yeah, but it's like, for me, like, the moment I saw the trailer and I just saw what he looked like, I was like, my God, this guy looks crazy. And even when he was presented, he was shown in very short bits. And as you said, we don't learn that much about him. We don't learn that much about his kids. We don't learn much about his motivations. But we can use our imagination of like who this guy was, how he was brought about, and almost like, wait, how did he build this kingdom? How did he build this following? But that's just the beauty. That's the imagination. But for Thanos, we spend the time learning everything about this dude. At one point, this guy even cries. At one point. So, is he really a villain? No, he's just a character that's obviously a bit misguided. See, he's more of like, let's say, maybe an antagonist, perhaps, maybe. But this whole thing of like, let's try and really understand the villain. Let's just see where they're coming from. Even if it's crazy, let's see where they're coming from. Like, then no, it's not a villain. A villain is, this just represents evil. I just feel that, you see, true villainy, and the thing that makes you fear something, again, that's why one of my top villains is Sauron. You see him for a short bit, and throughout 3 films, he's just hovering over. And that's mystery as to the villainy. And I think that what makes Immortan Joe just more effective as a villain is what he looks like, how little we know of him, and how very particular he's interspersed throughout the film is what makes his villainy much more effective. So let me go to Antonio, then I'll go to Basil. Antonio.
I completely agree with you, HH. That's how I've always rated my villains, is in terms of how efficient they are at evoking fear. Not so much how well they're built in terms of characters, or how multidimensional they are, or how much pathos they have as a character. That sort of stuff only grounds villains, and by grounding them, you make them more relatable. Another example that I would say.
And what's more scary than a villain you relate to?
More scary than a villain that you relate to, a villain you don't understand. And ultimately, fear is something you don't understand. But Another example I'll give is Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter is a much more rounded, multi-dimensional character, if you will. He's given a lot more screen time than Buffalo Bill, but Buffalo Bill is a far better villain.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is. I mean, I'm sure it's just a matter of taste, because, like, I think all the examples you've given are examples of great villains. Like, Emperor Palpatine is one of my favorite villains. Sauron's a great villain. Everything you said about Immortan Joe as well, I agree with, in the sense that, like, I like how not that you don't really get a sense of him, as in that, like, the film doesn't go into too much detail and doesn't bother with explaining all his backstory and everything. Like, the whole religion he's built around himself of him as this sort of god to his people is fascinating, and the film doesn't, like, plunge deep into it. You just, like, it's just the flavor. It just adds depth to him.
But that's why I'm surprised that you guys are disagreeing, because you just got done saying, Basil, that you appreciate Mad Max for not explicitly laying out the ground rules and doing it in a really, and part of the reason why it's so effective is because, you know, these things evoke images in your mind by not really being that literal. You know, it's not like a Chris Nolan script where everything has to be hammered into your brain. Where, you know, this is the theme, this is what the characters think, this is what's driving them, this is what you're supposed to think as an audience. No, this just very subtly,
right?
You know, lays out the breadcrumbs, and if you're paying enough attention, you'll go after them, and the puzzle becomes a more mythical thing in your mind that you want to complete. You know, no, I just think, H, what you're saying is that with villains, the more efficient villains for you are the ones where you don't really explicitly lay out what drives them. It's the more effective ones are the ones that are swathed in mystery and obscured to the audience.
Well, what I'm saying is, and the point I was getting to was that I disagree with you guys in the fundamental disagreement I have with you guys is that what makes a villain more effective is how scared you are of them. I don't think that that's a good measure of what makes an interesting and enticing villain, and even what makes a villain scary. I don't think that I feel like in a lot of cases you can, like, what makes a villain scary, and this is also going off on a tangent, so I don't want to go on. I don't want to go on about it too long, but also I think this is just a taste thing. What can make a villain scary is seeing yourself in them. And so, just to round up, the point was that you making the point that Thanos is not as interesting a villain, or not as good a villain, as Immortan Joe, and I disagree. Not in the sense that Thanos is 100% better or Immortan Joe is 100% better. I think they're completely different, and I think they both work in very different ways. And I think that Thanos still works as a villain, and I think this would then get into a whole discussion about Avengers, which we don't need to get into. But I think that it's like there's a lot of positive aspects about the portrayal of that kind of villain, and I think it works really well. And I think there's a lot more humanity in him that makes him more interesting, and in a lot of ways kind of more scary, because he's not just a monster. He's not Sauron. He's not this, like, big flaming eyeball in the sky that is completely alien. Is basically just a demon that you can't relate to at all. And that, yes, he's full of mystery and you only get a real glimmer of what his actual true essence is and true purpose is. That's effective and scary in its own way. I think, like, seeing yourself in a villain is far more effective. Anyway, but that's also, like, I went too much of, like, I think we went
no.
I mean, tangent on that.
I think this is maybe, like, it's probably a good conversation to have, maybe on a separate thing.
Well, I think, like, what makes a good villain would be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, very. And I think we should probably do that. For me, just like Thanos, for me, just Like, no, I'm sorry. He's a very, very good character.
Yeah.
A very good character. I don't think of him as a villain. I just don't. Villain and Thanos, just for me, it just doesn't compute based on what it was presented to me in Infinity War and End War. I don't even think of him as okay. I know he's the bad guy, but I think him as a villain. But
let's put that to another discussion because it's not really too relevant.
Yeah.
Fury Road.
No, but I just
other than just saying like Immortan Joe is a great villain.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like
we can all agree on. Like I agree with you on that.
Oh yeah, it's like
he's really we don't actually disagree in that sense.
And I think that's another thing that I think George Miller does really well. And I think what he did very well in Road Warrior Thunderdome is that the characters are amazing. Like just how he creates such crazy characters that could only exist in this world is amazing.
And that's why there have been so many imitators. Like there have been so many B movies of these like post-apocalyptic wastelands where they pretty much just like ape his style. They just completely copy it. Fist of the North Star pretty much directly just takes his aesthetic.
Like literally
villains.
He pretty much creates it.
Even if you cross into video games, there's a lot of that. Fallout, which is the original Fallout, not the atrocities.
Fallout is 100 combat, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite video games, and that's like a one-for-one copy of it was even called The Wasteland originally, and The Wasteland is the setting of Mad Max.
Okay, so let's sort of round this out now, so we can just sort of like get out of there. So, overall thoughts on the film, impact of the film, and just your feelings of the film. If you were just to put it up in one little nice package that starts first with Basil, your feelings on the film overall.
I feel like this film is not perfect, and there are elements of it that are weak. In a lot of perhaps some of the story elements and some of the main character elements. I feel though in a lot of ways it's kind of a masterpiece. I think there's very few films like it, and I feel like Miller has really schooled a lot of people in like just this is how action should be done.
Believe it.
And it's like if you're making an action film and you're making making a film in general, it's a film, and this is the medium you've chosen to tell this story. And so you use the film, you use cinema, you use the sound, you use the visuals, you use what the medium provides to tell the story. And I feel like that Fury Road does that so well. It's such a great example of visual storytelling, of cinematic storytelling. And aside from that, it's the impact and the energy of the action scenes is just it's hard to even put into words, like just how engrossing it is, just how exciting it is, and couple it with the music, how well it's directed and choreographed, and just I can see it's not for everyone, and I honestly, the first time I watched it, I was kind of 50-50 on it. It was only like when I watched it more that I started appreciating it more. And yeah, I think it's a real gem.
Mm-hmm.
And a great example of less is more, but also more is more, strangely.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to put it. I agree completely with Faisal. I think I'm just surprised that we went through over an hour of discussing Mad Max and we didn't mention the flamethrower guitar guy.
Sure.
I was literally that was literally what I was thinking. I said, are we not going to mention this dude?
Does it even need to be mentioned? It's just like it's so it's such an obvious plus that we almost don't need to mention.
Yeah, true. Like it's
you should be the poster.
Mm.
I would readily, I'd line up to watch the movie just about that guy, But yeah, it's like it's Mad Max Fury Road isn't. It's not so much a movie as an experience. It's one of those rare. It really is a ride. Those things, those blurbs that they put in posters, like it's a high octane thrill ride. You'll never forget. This is legit. This is. This actually warrants those blurbs. But and I think it's by far it's the apotheosis. It's the concretization, basically, of what George Miller was trying to do with all those previous Mad Max films. He finally was able to do with this one. Not a lot of studio interference, clearly, practically zero, I imagine. Unlike Thunderdome, and a budget that I assume also is bigger than all of them, at least from how it looked. But yeah, for me, it's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think for me, I think despite my issues with the Mad Max character and everything and how I felt he should have been used more, like it's like the visual storytelling on this is incredible. Some of the scenes will stand the test of some of the best scenes that we've ever seen in cinema. The directing, the attention to detail, the pacing, and the execution is incredible. Now, I still feel, and I'm probably alone in this, I still feel like if the best film in the series as a film overall is still Road Warrior. I think that's definitely the best film. But as far as filmmaking goes, this just sort of what Antonio was alluding to. This is just like the zenith and the pinnacle to what began on Mad Max 1. So just like the filmmaking techniques involved in this, because even when you're watching it, you're like, I was like, this must have been bloody hard to make, because you're thinking about how difficult would that have been to do, and getting the coordination of that and them to come in at the same time. Like because all these things you're just thinking about, like, this must have been really hard to bloody do. So I just think like it's one of those films where like 100% you have to sit it in a cinema. If you've got a home cinema, it's cool, but seeing it in a cinema was an experience, and like that final third, the final 50 minutes. Just one of the craziest last 15 minutes that I've ever seen. And I just think like it is definitely a film that stands out because it's so different in how it's trying to tell its story. So guys, that is all for this week's episode of Womb. Not Womb with a B, but Womb with a M.
2 O's.
Yeah, and 2 O's. So that's all from us, man. And yeah, next week, obviously, we'll decide what film we'll be doing next. That's a discussion we'll be having offline. But yeah, just say adios, my dear amigos.
Adeus in Portuguese.
Adios. All right, guys. Peace out. We'll see you guys later. Peace. Thank you. Peace.